Good morning, Sanaa.
Good morning.
I'm so happy that life brought you to Kigali at a time when I decided to start this podcast. And I remember Thursday when we were having coffee and you said, what is a podcast? But I thought we would just start by, explaining to you how this idea came about.
Okay. Okay, that would be nice.
I guess like very many people, I like having my friends and chat with them. And you have lived long enough to know the type of conversations that last all night long until the wee hours of the morning. And you feel like you have fixed all the problems of the world.
Yeah.
So with my best friend, her name is Elsie, at some point we said, this place is a conference room. It's our conference board.
Yeah.
It was back when I was in Geneva, so it was in my kitchen. And we would call it kitchen summits.
Oh.
And she would come, she lived in Bali, and then she lived in Fiji, and moved to Brussels. And then she said, I'm just coming to sit in this kitchen and feel like every problem will be solved.
Yeah, I see, yes.
And over time, there's another type of media that developed, which is the podcast, a bit of a mix between radio and radio show. Actually, it's like a radio show. I think in the beginning, most podcasts were just recorded and sound.
Nice.
And you do have a host and guests discussing many things. These days, it's like really every single media has very many podcasts with themes, literature, artists, doctors,
Yeah.
And many celebrities today actually have their own podcast, like it's the show.
Oh,
I saw that Michelle Obama started hers with her brother,
Is she?
and I didn't check it out, but it's new. It's been like a week.
Okay.
One of my favorite, I think, is Trevor Noah. The South
I
African
love
actor.
He's a one.
Watch his podcast. There's one with Lupita Nyong'o.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. The conversation with the two of them is brilliant.
Yeah.
So I was never in media. My background is banking, but I was like, I think we need to bring back plain, long, deep conversations with people of interest, and not necessarily experts, not necessarily like a theme. I don't want to cover a theme.
Yes.
And the focus, or I would say the thread for mine, it's personal stories.
I see.
It's personal stories.
Yeah.
Whether you are a doctor, you're an artist, or I will host an economist, I want to understand the their life journey, if they allow me to, and how it brought to key moments.
Yeah.
And the thread usually is a series of pictures of objects that you feel were meaningful and that would bring us to develop a conversation. But I think between you and I, we might not even need much.
We probably don't need much. And I think we hit it on well. I think it's very interesting. I've never been to this kind of thing before, a podcast or sort of thing. But I'm very happy to be here with you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can have it.
So I thought we would start by the beginning. If you were to introduce yourself, what would you say?
Oh, I would say my name, which is Sanaa Gateja. And I would say that I'm born 1950 Christmas.
Oh, okay.
Which, of course, a lot of times our birthdays are not recorded because we're born in the villages with the help of the village. What do you call midwives? Yeah, traditional midwives. So that was the case with me. So the 25th was probably picked up.
Or maybe it was remembered because it was the 25th.
Yeah, that's right.
My late father used to say he decided he was born in July, but he said, for me, I can't be for sure. But his sister, my aunt, she was born on Christmas, so apparently it's a real.
No.
It's
yeah. And
so maybe it's your case.
Yeah, and in my case, I think also the friend of the family had a child called Noel. And they probably liked the name and they gave it to me. So my third name is Noel.
Noel, not Emmanuel, because
Yeah.
people born on Christmas Day. So it should be
It's
the right,
Noel.
correct birth date.
Yeah, well, it's in my passport. Which is correct. And then I'm an artist. I'm a community artist, I would say, because I tend to derive my working time from working with communities. I got this way of working, which is making of units. And putting units together. And so the units make up the story from which I can construct a picture. So the units would be pieces of beads, for example, which are my speciality, paper beads, recycling. It could be cow horn shapes, beads. It could be anything really, even pieces of wood, recycling of building material. I always feel that there's a lot of wastage and a lot of materials are used, just like this book. Because you see, a book like this is recycled paper from various paper that somebody had thrown away. And that to me is very attractive. I don't like the throwaway culture because in Africa we never used to throw away. Where I grew up, anything, like say for example, you'd have a walking stick and somebody would stick a piece of nettle out of a Coca-Cola bottle or something, but they would construct it so well that it would fit the walking stick. You'd find, one time I saw a shield from Karamoja. Karamoja is North Uganda.
Yes.
A traditional shield made of a car part. It was a British Rover, Land Rover door.
Okay.
That had been made beautifully into a shield.
Into a shield.
So that is very important. And that's the area I'm dealing with.
So you would introduce yourself as an artist and community artist, I get it.
Yeah.
And those units, would you say that the units are specialized workshops by material, by fabric? What do you call
the units are designed by me.
Okay.
And when I'm designing the units, it's like creating a piece of artwork.
Okay.
It's almost like creating a piece of sculpture. Like a piece of bead, for example. A bead in African cultures held power. And it still does, and will always be, because the way it's made. In my case, I'm rolling paper with information inside. And this information is important. It was printed, it was read, and it has meaning. And yeah, roll it in a bead and wear it.
Now I want to ask you,
Yeah.
because this is how this book, I think, describes you, the innovation you brought about, that is paper beads.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? Like, where this idea of using paper?
Of using paper is,
from?
yeah, well, yes. I found...
I'm interrupting you. On account of his 1990 innovation of paper beads, is it accurate? It's a 1990?
Yeah, 1990 was when it actually flourished. But before that, I was a jeweler in London.
Okay, I'll continue. So we're going to check,
Yeah.
fact check what the book is saying about you.
Okay.
On account of his 1990 innovation of paper beads, processed from recycled paper, Gateja is popularly referred to as the bead king. His beads have proliferated through East Africa and supported livelihoods among small-scale artisans.
Yes.
Are they doing justice to your work?
That's quite true, because they're all over.
Gateja's career began in 1968 when he was appointed as the Assistant Crafts Officer at the Ministry of Culture and Community Development in Uganda.
Yes, yes.
In 1982, he studied interior design in Italy, and in 1985, he participated in a jewelry design program at Goldsmith College in London.
That is not true. I participated in an exhibition, 1985, that was called New Horizons. And it was a very, very important exhibition for Black artists.
In London?
In London,
Okay.
yeah. And when I mean Black artists, doesn't actually mean the color as such. It was minority groups in London that involved people from all over the place, including India, China,
Non-white, basically.
Yeah, but Irish also joined us.
As Black artists?
Yeah, we were part of it. Just they were minority groups. Yeah.
I see. So they go. Today he thrives as a jeweler, artist, and educator.
Yeah.
Working with bamboo, raffia, banana fiber, bark cloth, and plant pigments, Gateja's studio takes on the shape of a small factory. Is that the unit?
Well, I suppose I don't have a factory, I have a studio. And I have outreach studios or groups of women working in different places. But I suppose a factory puts it in a more
industrial way.
Yeah, because of the multiplication of the
I see. It takes on the shape of a small factory where the artist employs dozens of people to refine these raw materials into small, bead-like shapes. The beads are meticulously assembled on large stretches of bark cloth to make intricately beautiful wall hangings. Truth is Gold 2 presents multicolored paper beads arranged in repeated geometric shapes spread across the bark cloth canvas. So this is the piece they chose.
This is the piece.
It's a rather big one. So 200 meter over.
Yeah, it's 200 by something.
158 centimeters.
Yeah. So yeah, it's quite big. It's quite big. It fit that wall.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. This is Truth is Gold. Yes. It is the idea of a factory is the fact that people are many and they're producing things by hand. I suppose you could call that. I don't have machines. It's just the hands. And so,
They call it a factory.
They call it a factory, yeah. And the goldsmith idea, I didn't go to Goldsmith College. I went from Italy. I didn't do interior design as such. I went there to do interior design. I was given the opportunity to do interior design, but the college thought I was better an artist than an interior designer from my portfolio. And my pocket as well could not afford the department of interior design. I was paying for myself. So I opted for art and I was put in the jewelry department, which was perfect. It was accidental, but brilliant because jewelry has always been part of my life.
I want to pause here and, we started just with introducing yourself and then I wanted to check with you the facts in this book that supposedly is covering African artists. And so many things are coming through. Definitely, I want to go back to the beads and paper beads. Again, how did it come? The idea of recycling paper into beads. Was it, I think you have always done as a child, was it a process, a long thought through process?
Like I said, beads, things happen to you accidentally. As a child, I was very familiar with the beads, very large beads. My auntie from Congo used to visit us, and she wore these lovely big black beads and black and white beads, and they were very scary at my age. Very, very scary because they were sort of mystic. And so I had them in my mind. And later on in my life, after I left the Ministry of Culture and I went and started my studio in Mombasa, I saw large beads from Somalia.
Oh, from the Somali women? Or
Yeah, from Somali women. And they were wearing these amber beads. And the amber beads were big and small, but they were very, they reminded me of my childhood. And so I was very curious. And since I had a shop, I had a gallery, a little gallery, I started to buy them and sell them. And combine
amber
them.
beads?
Yeah, amber beads. And combine them with silver from Yemen. I was dealing with the Yemeni trader who was a friend of mine. And he used to give me silver beads silver, all sorts of silver belts, daggers, costumes. And sometimes they were old, they would be broken up in pieces. Then we assemble them and make jewelry and sell. Yeah. So beads were very common in my life. Coming to London, Europe, is very wasteful of paper. And they print such beautiful pamphlets, advertising.
Yes.
And they push them through the door. And you see this paper coming through your door.
Every day.
And what do you do with it? You can't throw it away.
You can't.
Well, I couldn't.
You couldn't. They do.
So I started to roll them into shapes, and eventually, together with including the inner toilet roll, the
Yes.
Yeah, because it's such a lovely tube that you could do many things with the tube. So my artistic instinct approached paper as a useful material for art. And then one day I was rummaging through college. I used to do evening college, in training, and I found in a box thrown away a bead that was very curiously, I had never seen a bead like that before.
Okay.
It was, reminded me of the Egyptian pheasant, fans, the ancient Egyptian beads that are beautifully elongated. And they have, and I've always made jewelry in a way like the big talks of the Celtic talks, and the Maasai, and the Egyptian jewelry. So this piece, I really fell in love with it. I asked the lecturer what it was, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's a piece of paper, bead." So I said, "Sure?" I said, "Yes." So I took it home and carefully opened it, and I saw it was a triangle. That was the beginning. So I made my own.
So when was that?
That was in London in 83, 4. Yeah,
some 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So you kind of stumbled upon.
I stumbled upon it, and I found that paper beads were being made by European women groups and children groups during the war because there was no metal.
Interesting.
There was no metal at all. Every metal was going to arms to
Of
create,
course.
yeah. And so people were innovating and creating beads, and
Out of scarcity.
yeah, out of
You would
scarcity
say.
of metal. And of course, while I was supporting my life in London and being a jeweler, I cast them into silver and I cast them into gold. I could get more money on the market. I used to go to markets. Yeah.
I mean, and then, so from then on, you kept working with paper
And
beads,
paper beads, yeah.
refining the process, creating these wall-hanging pieces mostly, or also sort of jewelry pieces?
I started off by doing jewelry. As I said, large pieces of jewelry and selling them on my return to Uganda, which was 1989, late. Yeah. I got a group of women and we made the beads and then we made the jewelry and we treated them. It was a very good exercise to try and enter into refining the material. And
how was it received?
it was received very well here in Africa because the labor force is there.
Is there?
And the need for innovations and is very important.
Okay.
Because traditionally every home had somebody making something.
Of course.
But in modern day, people don't use their hands anymore.
We don't.
We don't. And so if you introduce something that can be made by hand, it's very quickly picked up. And some of them are very good and, their hands are very good. So I have all sorts of workers.
I'm trying to picture you coming from Europe with many skills. I remember you told me about your stay in Italy. I didn't know that it was initially for interior design, then shifted into other things, to jewelry, and then London, and then you come back. So are you reopening a shop, or you opening a workshop and establishing yourself as an artist then, or what's the process on your way back?
Oh, my way back was purely to come and work. I had politically grown up and I realized the needs for our communities that you live in. In London, I worked with a group of artists and we had a group called Nubi Design Group. And we would go to schools, in inner city schools, and train children, especially the Caribbean children, the Indian community that were sent from Uganda during Amin. That was very interesting. I just stumbled them on.
So Uganda finds you in the UK.
In the UK.
How interesting.
Strangely enough, I found my classmate running a little shop, a corner shop in London.
Wow.
With an Indian guy.
Wow.
So anyway, this was by the way. So it was important for me to share my skills with the community and be able to produce what I wanted because that was the labor force. I didn't want a factory. I didn't want a shop anymore because the shop was the means of getting to where I wanted to go. If I did the shop, I would get to a gallery,
of course,
an art gallery or an antique sort of thing. But I came back to become an artist that would change people's lives. Yeah.
So you come back with the vision of both an artist and an educator and a community builder, I would think. Yeah. Because then you're also transmitting the skills, and from the skills you have these women and other people making a living out of it, also gaining skills themselves.
Yes.
I remember you telling me how you picked interest in goldsmith by just watching also community around you when you were a child.
Yes. This whole part of northern Rwanda, southern Uganda, the mountainous areas, there are very many metalsmiths of the past that made spears, that made knives, that made all sorts of things. And having grown up in Musanze, what is called
Musanze today.
I was a kid. And my mother would say, go and get me a knife from the metalsmith. I would go there and there would be, the bellows would be running and the men would be hitting the metal and the whole thing was amazing.
Spectacular. And fire.
And you know how traditional in Rwanda, this is something I was told, that if a young woman was sort of frigid, you understand?
I do.
They would take that young woman to metalsmiths. And she would just...
To rekindle the fire?
To rekindle the fire.
This is the first time I ever hear this.
Yeah. That's part of the work.
So little Sanaa is there watching the...
Yeah, watching this and participating and eventually get my knife. I'd go home. My neighbors were, potters. And we would go and make little cows and goats and things and put in fire. When they were firing the pots, then you'd get your pieces of toys out. There were mat makers or musicians that would come to the village when there was a village community. Almost like Uganda. So
I see.
People worked for each other, and you have a party at the end of it.
Of course.
Yeah, and the party meant that you'd have food. You'd make beer,
of course,
and drinks, and then people would come. Those who have dug your whole piece would clean up and sit and dance and eat and drink, and we had a great time. Yeah.
So you kind of, but of all the things you saw around, it seems like making goldsmith or whatever metalsmith piqued your interest more than any other craft around as a child?
Yes, because I feel the value of metal turning, and also being in. I worked a lot in Mombasa with the Zanzibari chest makers, metal brass workers, who I would then sell their wares. So the Arab chests were very, very valuable, and the workers were very close to me. So we used to fashion them and put them on wood and then sell them. Metal is very, very important. And unfortunately, coming back to Uganda, which is very much like many African countries, we don't process our minerals to a level where a jeweler can a local jeweler can actually use the metal. We export everything. Raw. So I come back hoping to start a goldsmithing studio, which I did. I brought a bit of gold and I found some gold on the black market, and it was dangerous because the very seller who sells you the gold will come back with thieves and take it away. This was very common.
Gosh.
So I had to run away from it.
Too dangerous a job.
Yeah, too dangerous a job. There was no shop. Although I got the license from the Ministry of Minerals.
So it was regulated somehow.
Yeah, but there was no gold to buy. So I turned to paper, I turned to fibers, I turned to nature.
To what was close
to me, and re-emphasize my mission of working with the community.
This is so amazing. I have so many questions. I see because we've had this long conversation the other day, the curious child who grew up almost organically into an artist, somehow maybe supported, at least not blocked or hindered by your parents to just develop your craft or your gift.
Yeah.
And then life bringing you to Europe and you coming back. And again, so you couldn't have gold to do what you wanted to do, and then you turned to beads. And fast forward, this is now 2025, and you've lived long enough to see the development of artists on our continent and African artists doing well on the contemporary scene.
Yes.
What is it you think you can't? I don't want to ask you about the direction people should take, because it's individual. But what would be one significant contribution the young artists today can bring to the world, coming from this continent? We speak of being from a country that actually does have gold,
Yes,
but exported raw. And this return of yours to nature, of course, I don't want to influence your answer, but if you were to project us into 20, 30, 50 years forward, what do you think contemporary African artists can bring to the world?
I think Africans haven't even touched what they can bring to the world in the way of creativity. We see much in books written by Europeans about Africa. We haven't seen much written by ourselves that talk about us. One thing I love being here in Kigali is that I see, the usage, the tradition coming into modern usage in architecture, especially in architecture, in Migongo and so on. But there is a treasure. It's almost like a treasure box. Africa has had an amazing evolvement, history of creativity, of work, and by people, and so that has not been actually touched. And partly because most of our cultural activities were taboo.
Come again?
They were made to be taboo. They were by the Christian churches, by the religion. Because if you want to change somebody, you have to uproot them from their home, their roots, and put them somewhere else. And so our roots may grow in a modern Western sense of the world, but there's still the spirit that follows us, that demands that you look back and actually use what you actually own and have. Because we have such amazing history, and we have such amazing resources, and we have a heritage of design, of creativity that we have not even touched. And I think the success of some of the artists today,
Yes.
African artists, is because there is this reflection at the back of their mind to use part of what their ancestors would give them to use, and then move forward. There's a little song
Which is?
in Uganda, talks about a woman who has forgotten something. Now, if she could only step back one step, then she'll move 2 steps ahead. So that's...
So we are like that woman.
We are very much like that woman.
I learned quite coincidentally from the actual minister of Minuwunge, of civic of unity. When he was doing his research back in the days, he was in France, researching the sites, the genocide sites all over the country. He discovered that every place you see a church in Rwanda, which is almost every hill, there was a place of worshiping.
Absolutely.
So they just very intentionally kind of erased that place of worshiping by creating the chapel or whatever there on the same very site.
Yeah, well, that's what they did themselves in the past, in the European, like the British, where they had their shrines or whatever, they would build a church. And the church becomes a replacement of what you would otherwise be believing. Unfortunately, it didn't look into what was there before. It was just to erase it and just put the new. And that's the education system.
The process of education.
Yeah, we have to change our education system. We have to relook or add more to it that belongs to us. Our languages. They're oral languages.
Yes.
But they have so much in them. A word is loaded with them. Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the writer, he decided while he was in London to write in his own language and then translate it into English. And it's amazing because he was telling us to write letters. You write a letter, like I can write a letter to you in my language and write the same letter to you in English. It will not be the same.
I know.
Yeah.
But Professor Ngugi created a trend. A good friend of mine who you might know of, Boris Boubacar Diop, he's Senegalese. He teaches literature. Identifies these days more as a journalist, but he's a writer. Stopped writing in French and in his mother tongue a few years back, and he was like, it was a deliberate decision. He's like, from now on, I'm not writing anymore in French, and there will be, he himself translates from Wolof to French and then to other languages. And then I was there when a journalist asked him, but then who will read your books?
Yes.
She's like, who will read your books now that you write mostly or exclusively in Wolof and you don't write in French anymore? And he gave the example of a writer, I can't remember his name, a Hungarian. He said, so this Hungarian artist, a friend of his, writes exclusively in Hungarian because he doesn't speak English or French. Would you ever ask him the question, who will read your books? So now readership becomes a problem once an African francophone, so-called, writer decides not to write in French anymore. He says, but the community of people who speak, read, and write in Wolof is 10 times bigger than the ones in Hungarian. So there is readership. He's like, do not worry, there is readership. Plus, I can translate my own books in whichever language. For him, it's in French. But then the journalist was kind of puzzled because implicitly he was saying it's a racist question. You wouldn't ask this to a white person. Why do you write in Arabic? Why do you write in your mother tongue? He says, I dream in Wolof. I think first in Wolof. I wonder how I have been able to be so prolific in French.
Yes.
But then I asked him on the side, Boris, what happens? Like, what has changed in your way of writing since you don't write anymore in French? He says, I realized that I was not writing to and for my people. So, as he said, as a writer, because he wrote novels, he had in mind really the reader. So when you write in French, you might not picture your own people as you write in French. That's what he was saying. So I found it so interesting, the the schizophrenia, maybe some people on our continent who create books or art might be living with, because your quote-unquote first market doesn't seem to be yours first.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our storytelling in as children in homes that we didn't have electricity.
Yes.
That we had a fireplace, and we would all have a meal after having eaten, satisfied. Somebody would come up with a story, talk about the day's activities, but at the end of it, when you're about to go to bed, somebody would tell you a story. And that storytelling it's a woven history, woven activities. It tells not only the story, but far more in that story. Now, I can't tell children such a story in English.
Of course.
Because, for example, how could I call the activities people are doing were nothing related to English. So really, we should teach our mother tongue to re-emphasize who we are and to bring back forth what. It is interesting how the Jews recreated their language and rewrote it after so long having lost it. Yes.
Okay, I didn't know.
Oh yes, they brought back bits and pieces and recreated their language.
Interesting, very interesting.
And it can be done, especially for us. We haven't even lost it.
We haven't much.
Yeah.
It's almost a process of becoming whole again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For me, I was born in Burundi, and then my parents moved to then Zaire, Kinshasa, and then to the east, Goma, where at least people were Banyarwanda. So, but when we were in Kinshasa, one thing my siblings and I got very quickly, my parents didn't want us to speak Lingala, whatever. My mom was like, "Your Lingala stops at the gate."
I see.
Stops at the gate, and it was very stern.
Yeah.
But my parents, because they only spoke Kinyarwanda to each other, and to us, but we would always speak in English, because we wanted so badly to fit.
Yes, of course.
We wanted so badly to fit,
and
and we knew that if we bring like my parents' accent in the street, it's the end of you. I mean, kids will make fun of you, and then they tolerated that we spoke French. So with my siblings, we spoke French only, and to them.
Yeah.
And then something very strange happened in 1990. We had then moved to Goma, and the RPF launched the struggle. Literally overnight, we started speaking Kinyarwanda.
Yes, because you identified with the struggle.
It was almost like we were allowed to.
Yes.
We were not closeted anymore.
Yeah.
But this process, I still don't understand the switch. It was overnight. So one of my sisters, I always joke that her Kinyarwanda is a Muzungu Kinyarwanda. You can tell. But we grew up with our grandparents. I was lucky. My father has his both parents in nearby. I was very close to my maternal grandmother as well. So they told us stories in Kinyarwanda. They spoke only Kinyarwanda. But there was like something like, it wouldn't just come. But 1990 really overnight.
It came over,
And we picked interest in reading and writing in Kinyarwanda. I was a teenager, so I was 15. It was a bit late almost. But then I decided to read, and then reading out loud, because, reading in Kinyarwanda for the first time at 15, it's like mind-bending a bit. Then long story short, I moved to Switzerland in 1994 and lived there until 2018 when I came back here. And because I was so young when I moved to Geneva, I never thought it was an effort for me to speak French all day long, because even to my son when he was born, I was just speaking, maybe a few words would come in Kinyarwanda because I was feeding him, or like the words, or when I got angry, he knew it would come in Kinyarwanda. But when I moved here, there's something I described to a friend saying, I had maybe a fatigue I did not know of. Now I feel like my shoulders are lighter. Not that life is any easier, because it was actually difficult adjusting and all of that. But the mere fact that I didn't have to translate anything.
Yes.
And then my friend told me, Janine, it's because you don't speak French 24/7. I'm like, I speak French, I think in French, I write in French, maybe I dream in French. Why do you make it a big fuss? It's like, I swear to God, the moment it was an effort. You didn't know it was labor.
Yeah.
You didn't know it was, it took something away.
Yes.
But now you feel like, yes, like everybody else. You speak and you use whichever language you want to use, by the way.
Yes.
And it's something we barely realize until we get to a place where the nervous system is safe.
Yes.
Because then all around you, then I told my brother, and he said, you know what? And he said for him, it's because when we were home, there was only Kinyarwanda because of our parents. So for us, Kinyarwanda is the sound of home.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, now you feel at home. You were never at home, which is true.
Yeah.
Which
It's
is
the
true.
background. It's the
It was the music of home.
Yeah.
Like literally. And we, most of the time, I don't even speak Kinyarwanda to some people. Most people, it depends. Whenever I need it, I use it. But then the rest for the mind, when you don't have to wrestle with maybe who you are.
And yes, it's interesting because I think when you have a chance to speak your mother tongue, even if you spoke it in different accents,
Yes,
it doesn't matter.
it truly does.
Because there are many accents within it anyway. But it is very descriptive, it is very safe.
It is safe.
And you feel every word you speak is understood. So I mean, I speak 4 languages. I speak English, I speak Uganda, I speak Kiswahili, and my mother tongue, which is Kinyarwanda. So, and when I'm speaking, I found it easier to speak Kinyarwanda with people. Although when I'm in Rwanda, I find I have to polish my Kinyarwanda.
You become a bit self-conscious.
Yeah. Because most of the time I'm speaking Luganda or I'm speaking, but I have to polish that language. But it's very nice. Yeah.
For me, I speak French and English and Kinyarwanda and Swahili. I do remember some Lingala. I speak Spanish too. And I think I can read in Italian, but I don't speak. And if people are not fast, I would understand.
Yes.
But I see how when you switch also, you sort of become another person.
Yes, of course.
You sort of become another person. So I guess we carry many identities
or
layered identities, and they play.
But they're very important identities because I think you've been to Switzerland, and if somebody called you now and we were speaking Kinyarwanda, and suddenly you speak French.
Yes.
And then you put yourself into a French corner and you speak it, and then somebody will call you again, and then Swahili, and then you have to be correct in speaking Swahili.
I try.
But you try.
Yes.
And then you will speak it nicely because that person expects you to be Swahili speaking. So you find that modern life gives us that access to actually communicate with so many more people.
Thank God.
And be able to travel to many places.
And morph and fit.
And fit into places like that, you know.